Hey guys, it's Gadi, Schwartz, and tonight we are following a lot of breaking news. It looks like the Coast Guard has found a plane that disappeared in Alaska carrying 10 people, and the question now is, where are the passengers? And plans to cut USAID's workforce by the thousands just hit a legal speed bump.
I don't think they have any idea the consequences of what they're doing. They have a wrecking ball, they go into an agency, destroy it, and they're on to somewhere else.
Our preference would have been to do this in a more orderly fashion from the top down, but we had no cooperation and, in fact, insubordination, and so it required us to work from the bottom up.
Well, just hours ago, a judge putting a pause on the Trump administration's deadline to strip down the agency's staff. Garrett Haake is going to have more from the White House. Plus, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem takes a look at the migrant holding facilities at Gitmo, and this as there is new reporting tonight that the Trump administration may bring back immigrant family detention centers. And those are just some of the stories we are following. There is so much more to unpack tonight. Let's get going, because it's a stay tuned now. And as we are coming on the air, another plane crash, this time in Alaska. And just in the last few minutes, the U.S. Coast Guard says they've found the wreckage. And this is the picture that they just released of that plane that was carrying 10 people to Nome, Alaska. Rescue crews say they have found 3 bodies inside. The Coast Guard says they believe that the remaining 7 people are also inside the plane, but they can't be sure because they can't reach it due to the condition of the plane. Now, flight radar shows Bering Air Flight 445 took off at 2:39 local time. It was supposed to land in Nome an hour later, and this wreckage was found on what appears to be ice about 34 miles away from the Nome airport. And this is what conditions looked like at the airport yesterday. You see the snow whipping, winds up to 50 miles an hour. And that was before losing contact with the flight. Air traffic control did notice a sudden drop in altitude and speed. Take a listen.
Bering Air 445, Anchorage Center, radar contact lost 25 miles east Nome DOR. If you copy center, let me know.
And the crash marking the 3rd major aviation disaster in the U.S. in the last 8 days. Last Wednesday, 67 people died after an Army helicopter and a commercial jet crashed into the Potomac. Just a few days later, an air ambulance crashed in the northeast Philadelphia area, killing 6 people on board and 1 on the ground. Let's get right over to NBC's Dana Griffin, who's here with us in the studio. Dana, they're saying the 3 bodies were found in the plane. At first, they just said the 3, and now they're saying that they think that the 7 others are also in the plane.
Yes.
Is there any chance, or does it look like they know what happened?
I think they realize that these people are all going to be deceased. And here's the reason why, because it has now been a full day since that plane disappeared from radar. And unfortunately, this looks like a sheet of ice, like a really thick sheet of ice. We've seen investigators out there walking on top of it. And as you were reading the intro to this, it actually triggered something, because during the press conference, they said that a lot of these planes have these sort of emergency locating transmitters. So if exposed to seawater, it automatically sends a signal to the Coast Guard that, hey, there may be a plane in distress. And they couldn't figure out why there was no signal. And maybe this is why, because it did go down over the water, but there's a lot of ice out there. And so and this was part of the confusion, because they deleted the tweet. Well, now the tweet is back, and they did clarify that they believe all 10 passengers or 10 people and pilot were on that plane, but they just couldn't access the 7 others. So it's a really tough situation, obviously very tragic. They have not released any information about the people that were on that plane, but we know 10 adults, very tragic, just 34 miles southeast from their destination. This was supposed to be less than an hour flight, 40 minutes after taking off. They say there was a rapid descent, rapid loss of speed. Something happened up there in the air. We just don't know yet what happened.
And you know, when you think about how rural, how spread out everything is in Alaska, you forget that, like, airplanes are really the only mode of transportation a lot of times, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think we have a map that shows exactly where the plane took off from, Laclede to Nome. And you can see the quickest way to get there is by plane. These 2 towns are not connected by roads or bridges. So clearly, this is the best opportunity or the best way to travel. And a lot of people get across this massive state by taking planes. There was no weather advisory in the area at the time. However, there was wind, there was light snow. there was frigid conditions. So something weather related could be at play here. That's something the NTSB is going to be looking at over the next several days. It's just another sad story because, like you mentioned, the third major plane incident in the last 8 days.
Incredibly tragic. And for us down here in the lower 48, we look at that and we're like, the treacherous conditions, yet, Alaskan pilots, that's the kind of stuff that they deal with day in and day out.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation.
Dana, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
And joining us now is NBC aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti. He is a former FAA and NTSB investigator. Jeff, we know that something happened there that made the plane experience some rapid loss in elevation and speed. We know that the conditions were horrible, but what could cause this?
Well, I think that the NTSB and the FAA have much better radar information probably than the public can get. But yeah, it looks like this airplane could have aerodynamically stalled and got into a spin. That picture that you showed, the sole picture showing the airplane wreckage, indicates a very flat impact to me. Everything is, you see both wings, all four corners of the airplane appear to be there. And it looks like a classic stall spin kind of pancaking in. Right. It doesn't look like a high velocity impact.
And that's, like I've flown a little bit in Cessnas, and Cessnas, they're built to glide as best as they can. This is a prop plane. Do you think that it would have been coming in belly down, possibly trying to glide? Or is there anything that these conditions make for that's impossible?
Well, the public radar indicates that it did just suddenly drop off of radar. It began to lose altitude and airspeed very quickly, and then there's no more data from there. So that indicates something happened at altitude, not while they were attempting to land. And there's a report that the pilot indicated he was in a holding pattern. He was going to continue to hold to see what the Nome landing weather was like. And perhaps during that hold, something happened. The airplane experienced ice. The pilot became incapacitated. But I think if you would have had a mechanical malfunction or an engine failure, which is very rare for this kind of airplane, the pilot would have had an opportunity to relay a Mayday call. But you don't even have that. Investigators are really going to have to examine this wreckage closely and analyze the recorded radar data from radar sites from all over Alaska to try to piece together that fall, that drop in altitude.
And we're not getting a lot of answers. It's still very early on, but it does look like it's on ice. We're not sure if that's on land, if that is sea ice that it is on, but does that make the investigation and the recovery a little bit more difficult?
Yes, it does. In fact, I used to work in the NTSB Alaska office for a couple of summers early in my career, and I worked a Cessna 208 Caravan fatal airline accident just like this one, and it crashed on the ice offshore. So this did not happen onshore. This happened in a frozen piece of water off, 25 miles south of Nome. And so it's going to be difficult. When I investigated an accident like that, the government flew me out by helicopter and dropped a few investigators around to gather as much evidence as possible because that ice might be in danger of breaking up. So documenting the wreckage on the ice will be very important for investigators.
And finally, there's this societal question, like it is a very natural thing if you're at home or just reading through the headlines here. 3 major aviation mishaps, 3 major crashes back to back. Like there's got to be something going on. And when you look at the details here, at least for us that have covered it, I mean, is there anything that you see that is similar or any connective tissue here? Or is this just, a coincidence of tragedy?
Gadi, I think it's the latter, not the former. Looking at all 3 of these accidents, all 3 are very different. There might be some common denominator that investigators will pick out of it, but I really doubt it. You couldn't have 3 completely different types of accidents. A midair collision, a high-velocity impact in a business jet, and then this single-engine turboprop mysteriously, dropping out of the sky, operating in Alaska, which, as you indicated, is a very unique operating environment. So I don't see any connective tissue. These things happen in fits and spurts at times. They're unpredictable, but I still think the public should feel safe in flying commercial aircraft.
Yeah, we will take those words to heart. Jeff Gadi, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your analysis.
Thank you.
Breaking tonight in Washington, a chaotic end to the week as the Trump administration pushes ahead with overhauling the federal government, and a judge has stopped the order to put thousands of USAID staff around the world on leave. That despite the agency's letters that you see right here scraped off the Ronald Reagan building in Washington today and just hours before a midnight deadline. Meanwhile, Elon Musk has a new directive from President Trump. You can add the Pentagon to the list of federal agencies now under DOGE review.
You directed Elon Musk to review Pentagon spending, given it's the biggest discretionary spending in the federal budget?
Yes, I have Pentagon, education, just about everything. We're going to go through everything. I've instructed him to go check out education, to check out the Pentagon, which is the military. And, sadly, you'll find some things that are pretty bad. But I don't think proportionally you're going to see anything like we just saw.
Okay, so DOD, education, Treasury, the list goes on. Our Garrett Haake pressed the president at the White House today on Elon Musk's unprecedented access inside the federal government. Here's that exchange.
Is there anything you've told Elon Musk he cannot touch?
Well, we haven't discussed that much. I'll tell him to go here, go there. He does it. He's got a very capable group of people. Very, very capable. They know what they're doing. But I will pick out a target, and I say go in. There could be areas that we won't, but I think everything's fertile. We're a government. We have to be open. And as an open government, I don't know, I guess you could say maybe some high intelligence or something. And I'll do that myself if I have to.
And Garrett Haake joins me now in the place where news literally never stops. And I'm just getting this right now. We just got in that President Trump has pulled Biden's security clearance. Well, what's going on right now?
This was kind of shocking, Gadi, not because it's a huge surprise that Trump did this, but ultimately I think it's the first time that he's really gone after President Biden. We've seen these sort of small acts of retaliation against other figures in the Biden administration who've kind of been stuck in President Trump's mind, canceling security clearances for other officials, canceling security details for even people who had worked for him. But this is kind of the first time he's gone after President Biden directly, canceling his clearance, canceling his access to daily intelligence briefings. We don't even know if that's something that Biden has been taking advantage of in his retirement right now. But President Trump said this is because Biden canceled his clearance. That's true. That happened after January 6th. Biden said he thought that Trump, then a private citizen, was just too erratic. I'm curious to see if this is going to be the first of many actions that President Trump takes to kind of go after his predecessor, or if this is a one-off. But I also think it's notable that he did it not here in Washington, not while he was facing the press, but after he'd already left town and touched back down in Florida. Are they burying it? Is this something that they hope that goes away? Or do they just not want the blowback on what could be the start of more retribution against the guy who had this office before he did?
I'll leave it to you to always read between the timing lines. It is Friday night. Meanwhile, this has been a crazy week. We've got Trump saying Musk is allowed to go here, go there. What has DOGE not gained access to at this point?
As best I can tell, they're pretty much everywhere that they want to be, at least at different levels. I mean, the president said today he wants Musk to go deeper at the Department of Defense. That's going to be a big project. The DOD spends more money than any other part of the government that isn't Social Security or Medicare. It's got more sacred cows, more programs in more congressional districts. They're going to get even Republicans riled up if Musk goes in and says, we want to cut this, this, and this. That's the thing I'm watching. He also told me at that news conference that he doesn't see Musk going into Social Security and Medicare. If you really want to cut federal spending in the kind of way that'll make a big difference on deficits, that's ultimately what you have to do. But President Trump still says that's off the table.
And it's so hard these days to understand what is definitely fact and what is just, I don't know, memeing and trolling. Yeah. Do we know how much actual savings DOGE has come up with?
Well, the short answer is no. I mean, it's really hard to get a transparent look at this kind of thing. I mean, for some perspective, like the USAID piece of this puzzle at all, their annual budget's something like $42 billion. Musk and his folks say they've identified 13 or so million with an M in terms of fraud that they've uncovered. That's a small percentage. But then when you talk about salary, staff, contractors, overhead. I mean, just tonight we learned that the USAID has lost their lease on that big building downtown in Washington, D.C., where their headquarters are, and that CBP is moving in. Those numbers will start to add up, but there is no consensus, spreadsheet somewhere that really has these numbers. And that's part of the challenge. It was sort of holding Musk and his team accountable because they're working in this very hodgepodge way. And most of the data that they share is on X, where there's also a lot of trash data that just isn't real.
And speaking of accountability in Musk's team, like there was a DOGE staffer who resigned over some old racist tweets, but now is apparently back after some back and forth between, I guess, Elon Musk and the vice president. What's the latest there?
Yeah, everything about this was weird, Gadi, except how it started. Here you had, Washington journalists uncovering these old tweets by this DOGE staffer saying some pretty unequivocally racist things. The staffer then resigns. That's usually the end of the story, but not here. Here, the vice president kind of took this person's case up as a cause and tweeted that this is not the kind of thing that somebody should basically be canceled or have their life ruined over. Not saying that was even how this was going to play out. The vice president picked it up. A Fox News reporter in that press conference today asked President Trump about it, who said, I don't know, I'm not even familiar with this. J.D. Vance, you're sitting in front of me. Is this really the way it went down? Vice President says yes. President says, great, I think he should have his job back. Musk posts on X that the guy's been rehired. I mean, a complete rewiring of the way these kind of stories typically play out in Washington. And given the sort of hyper online nature of both Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, the two people most in President Trump's ear on these kind of issues, I don't think this is the last time this sort of thing's going to happen, Gadi.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And again, the pile of news is insane. I can't believe it's Friday here. But
what are we doing in the second hour of this show? Yeah,
I know exactly. Probably talking about the judge's decision today on the USAID pause. Is that temporary? Is this thing going to be decided anytime soon, or is this going to be long, drawn-out months of a battle in court?
Well, this particular judge says this particular pause is temporary and short-term. I mean, you're probably talking about into early next week. I think it's possible you'll have more lawsuits on this. I mean, you look at the ways that different organizations are trying to stand up to President Trump in different ways. The lawsuits have been far more effective than the kind of traditional political pressure that congressional Democrats, for example, are trying to put in place. But the Trump White House believes that ultimately these are executive agencies and the executive of the federal government is making these decisions. They think they'll win these cases, whether it's this week or next month. I mean, remember, this deadline for today on USAID and for the buyouts, the other big story, were completely arbitrary. So whether they get pushed back a little bit or not, it doesn't really matter to the White House so long as these things get done.
No one breaks it down like you. Sorry for taking up so much of your Friday night, but Garrett Haake, thanks, brother.
All good, man. You bet.
And USAID employees wait for legal issues to be resolved. We're already seeing the impact abroad. One of the international efforts already bracing to be cut off from U.S. funding was created by Republicans more than 20 years ago. Watch.
Seldom has history offered a greater opportunity to do so much for so many. I asked the Congress to commit $15 billion over the next 5 years, including nearly $10 billion in new money, to turn the tide against AIDS.
All right, that was early 2000s, and since 2003, the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief has helped save millions of lives in poor countries around the world. And in South Africa, the HIV rate among adults has dropped from almost 30% in 2003 to 12.7% in 2024. But still, millions of South Africans living with HIV are facing the potential effects of the U.S. freezes on funding. And in Johannesburg, HIV clinics are already shutting down and turning people away. Sky News African correspondent Yousef Albargara has a story.
The streets of South Africa's biggest city, unable to ignore its biggest health crisis. Over a quarter of all the people in the world living with HIV are here in South Africa. 8.5 million people, and many more who are working hard to avoid contraction, now stumped by Trump's USAID freeze that is shutting down critical clinical support.
I am aware of the funding freeze from the US.
What does that mean for you and your family and friends?
Rather, let's not just put it on my family and friends, but what does it mean for South Africa?
South Africa is already reeling from the USAID stop work orders, directly impacting close to 1 million HIV-positive people. And in these inner-city neighborhoods where sex work is commonplace, reproductive health is high priority, meaning every clinic counts. Clinics like this are a lifeline for people in this community, especially women suffering from HIV. This one, now shut, is a huge disappointment for people just trying to stay alive. Okay, no problem. Are you trying to go to the clinic?
Yeah.
It's closed.
What happened?
I mean, the USAID funding has been frozen, so they're closing down clinics.
And how come? Because I was using preps from here, I do all my blood tests here. But I haven't been here for like almost 2 months.
How do you feel that you found it shut?
Funny. It's very funny. I don't know what to do. Serious. What will I do? There's nothing. No? It's fine. Thanks.
A despairing moment for a community that's already so vulnerable, where even healthcare workers in at-risk clinics are concerned for their loved ones.
I think I will lose people, friends, families, parents out there. You know, people are really, really in a bad condition as we speak because they are afraid of losing their lives. They're afraid of losing their friends, losing their families because of this issue.
The uncertainty is scarily familiar for the survivors of the HIV epidemic in the early 2000s. Are you scared for other people who might be going through the same thing?
Yes, I am, especially in this challenge we are facing. I don't want the pregnant woman to go in that life that I was facing it before, because right now we go back again.
The biggest recipient of US AIDS relief is now reeling from its disruption. The grim reality of a globalized world. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News, Johannesburg.
And tonight, sources are telling NBC News that it looks like the Trump administration wants to restart immigrant family detention. Our sources adding that ICE is preparing to ask private prison companies to bid for contracts to restart those facilities. Family detention ended under the Biden administration in 2021, but both the Obama and Trump administrations detained parents with kids. Meanwhile, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem headed to Guantanamo Bay today, where over 600 military personnel are there setting up tents to eventually hold 30,000 migrants who the administration refers to as the worst of the worst. We're talking criminals and other gang members. And here's some photos from yesterday's flight. The Trump administration says they transported 13 suspected Venezuelan gang members. Another similar flight flew out today. But as immigration enforcement ramps up around the country, we're starting to see that things at the southern border are extremely quiet. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez went down there to check it out.
Tonight, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visiting Guantanamo Bay as the Trump administration searches for ways to hold the undocumented immigrants it's arresting. This week, ICE detention facilities at 109% capacity.
We're looking for as many beds as we can get.
Still, NBC News has learned President Trump has expressed anger that the number of arrests is not higher, according to 3 people familiar with the discussions at ICE in the White House. One source adding it's driving him nuts they're not deporting more people. It all comes as the new Attorney General ramps up pressure on sanctuary cities, suing Democrat-led Chicago and the state of Illinois, arguing they interfere with arresting and deporting undocumented immigrants.
They are choosing illegal aliens over the safety and security of their own citizens.
The lawsuits are against laws on the books in Illinois. I mean, unlike Donald Trump, we follow the law in Illinois.
Meanwhile, in South Texas early this morning, we get another firsthand look at the front lines.
I've noticed most recently not as much activity.
What was once a record influx of migrants, now a trickle. We didn't spot one in 5 hours with Border Patrol.
It used to be that the vast majority of migrants here would turn themselves in. Now, most of them are single adults trying to escape.
In 2021, this area saw more than 1,500 illegal border crossings a day. Now, less than 100.
Have you ever seen it this quiet?
Not that I can remember.
Nearby, the state of Texas is offering the federal government 1,400 acres of land for a massive detention facility. David Porras is a first-time Trump voter here in Starr County, which voted Republican in the presidential election for the first time since 1892.
You're here illegal, you break the law, you should be deported.
And we've just learned the Trump administration is now using federal prisons to house undocumented immigrants. Gadi?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. And here are some of the headlines we're watching tonight. The DOJ is not releasing the names of FBI agents who worked on the January 6th cases to the public, and that decision comes after attorneys for FBI employees filed a lawsuit to prevent the disclosure. They fear that these employees would be fired in retaliation. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is investigating the investigations into the January 6 riots. And 350 people were evacuated from a train as flames broke out last night. The SEPTA train near Philadelphia caught fire and flames spread from underneath the local station there. A Florida family is calling for the removal of nitrous oxide after a woman's death. The woman died after what relatives described as a years-long addiction to the gas. They allege that manufacturers are exploiting a legal loophole that allows them to sell it as a culinary tool rather than an inhalant. And live poultry markets are shutting down in parts of New York. Officials there say they have found bird flu at 7 markets in the New York City area. The virus has been spreading, wiping out millions of birds across the country. The shutdown of markets will last 5 days. And a major gastrointestinal outbreak on the deck. Over 90 passengers and a crew member on a week-long cruise are sick. They initially set sail from Tampa, Florida, making stops in Cozumel, the Roatan Islands, Belize City, and Costa Maya. The cause of the illness is still unclear. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Coming up, we are digging deeper into the prices you are paying, why gas and grocery costs are soaring 1 month into the year, especially for eggs, if you can even find them. But first, a winter tornado leaving behind destruction in Tennessee. And look at the damage coming up next. Hey, welcome back. Taking you now to Tennessee, where at least 5 confirmed tornadoes last night left a trail of destruction and tragically killed a mother and her daughter.
Trees falling. Bro, there's a tornado right over here.
Just don't even give it justice. Holy.
And those nighttime twisters ripping through small towns near Knoxville, leaving homes destroyed, thousands of people out there without power, one of them touching down in a community that's never seen a tornado in February before, according to the National Weather Service. NBC's Kathy Park is on the ground in Tennessee with more.
Gadi, the damage here in Morgan County is sporadic, which goes to show you the unpredictability of Mother Nature. There are some neighborhoods completely untouched, and then you have communities like this where you can see there is a big cleanup ahead, lots of downed trees as well as power lines. But the good news is we have been seeing crews working around the clock today to get everyone back online. Now, earlier today, Gadi, we had a chance to speak with Richard Williams, and he told us that he survived the tornado. He was actually heading to bed around 8:30 last night, going to the bedroom when he said the tornado lifted his home, and he was still inside. Take a listen.
Just as I got to the end of the bedroom, that's when it started.
And describe to me that moment. You said the winds literally lifted your home.
You could feel the house lifting. And then it was like it went to spin, and then from that, it just slung me everywhere.
Richard told us that he came out of the rubble, sustained some injuries, yelled for his wife. He was able to track her down, but tragically, he confirmed that his ex-wife, as well as his daughter, they live on the same property. They are among the dead. Now, Gadi, here in Tennessee, it is extremely rare, especially in February, to have 5 tornadoes in one day, when typically the state sees just about 3 for the entire month. Gadi?
Kathy Park, thank you. And coming up, how a TikTok post sparked a movement. What is HillmanTok and how it's bringing HBCU communities together? But first, you got to see this. Valentine's Day is next week, but for some, it's not all roses and chocolates. So if you have an ex that you're mad at and you're looking for a healthy way to channel those feelings, well, the Bird Rescue Center in Anchorage, Alaska will name a mealworm after your ex and then feed it to those birds. And that is all for a good cause. The sanctuary has taken $10 donations per worm. And if you're feeling extra salty or extra charitable, for $100, they will feed a rat named after your ex to those raptors. That is what we call some closure. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Let's talk economy, because the first jobs report of the new year came in under expectations, but unemployment is creeping down towards record lows. So are things feeling better? Are they feeling worse as we spend our money? Well, that depends on who you ask and what you are buying. So let's ask our good friend Caleb Silver over at Investopedia how he's feeling about all this. Caleb, thanks for joining us. How do you read this jobs report, first off?
I feel like this might be the high water mark for jobs that we'll see for a long time. This doesn't take into account, obviously, anything to do with the wildfires or any of the government buyouts or any of the contractors that have been affected by a lot of these work stoppages. So I think this is it for a while. But this is actually a normal number, Gadi. 143,000 doesn't sound like a lot, especially when we had more than 256,000 last month. We are in a normal hiring part of the economy right now. When you look at the job growth, it's been in the areas like healthcare, where it's been for the past couple of years, retail trade, 34,000, a little carryover from the holiday season, and social assistance. Healthcare and social assistance have been the strong areas of job growth, but this is kind of a normal job growth, not the blowouts we've had in the past few months.
I mean, it's so wild to hear that, because if you listen to those that are in like the politics world, it seems like everything is so topsy-turvy and things are changing. But do the markets and do like all the economic indicators that we're looking at right now, do they seem pretty stable?
They seem pretty stable. We just got the gross domestic product, GDP growth for last year. How did the economy grow? It was over 2.5%. So that's good growth. The unemployment rate at 4%. That is historically low. That is full employment as far as the Federal Reserve is concerned. There are jobs out there, more jobs than people who are leaving their jobs, and wages keep rising. At the same time, a lot of things are being turned upside down right now in the jobs market, especially in government jobs. And I think we're going to start to see the effects of that going over for the next 5 to 6 months. I think we're going to see a real turnaround here. That said, the American worker and the American consumer is in a decent spot, although we do have spiraling credit card debt.
And the eggs, Caleb, and the eggs. I mean, we were just at Trader Joe's, like signs are going up saying that there's an egg limit because of supply issues. You go to other places and there are no eggs. I went to Costco a week ago and they didn't have any eggs there at Costco. So what's going on there?
Yeah, you know, when Waffle House is charging an additional 50-cent surcharge on one egg at a time, it's very serious. Egg trucks are being stolen. We have egg prices up 37% in the past year. And the big culprit is that avian flu. That has destroyed a lot of the egg-laying hens in this country. 118 million in just the past year alone. And we've seen the price of a dozen eggs go from just $3.65 in November all the way to $4.15 in December, and continuing to rise. Now there are shortages, and avian flu just keeps spreading. Another big outbreak at a farm in Indiana affecting millions of hens.
I'm sorry, and again, I'm the news guy allegedly here. Did you just say egg trucks are being stolen?
Yeah, and I saw that on NBC yesterday. Egg trucks are being stolen, hijacked. This has become one of those very serious issues, because that's the one thing we buy in supermarkets. Got to change the way that they sell them. They used to price them super low to bring us in. It was a lost leader, because if you went in to buy eggs, you were buying bread, you were buying jelly and other things. Now, because of the supply issues, they have raised the price a lot. So every time you go in, it's a lot more. Every single week you go in, they seem like they're getting more expensive.
Egg, I mean, that's wild, and I will be Googling that and on NBCNews.com immediately after this show, looking into that. But it's just crazy that there's so much news in the world, and we've now got people stealing egg trucks. Caleb Silver, thanks for the news on all of that. Thanks for joining us tonight. And here are some of the other stories happening out west that we are following right now. In Arizona, a man who admitted to murdering his ex-girlfriend and setting her body on fire has been sentenced to life in prison. The man says they were driving their way to take a paternity test before getting into a fight. The couple's 7-month-old baby was found on the side of the road in a car seat. Police say she wasn't hurt. And LA police arrest a suspect for generating millions of dollars from stealing and reselling chassis. They say that they would take chassis set aside for commercial drivers and then would resell them as if they were new. Authorities recovered 24 chassis worth around $600,000. And LA County has new funding available for small businesses impacted by the wildfires here. Small businesses, nonprofits, and workers can now directly apply for financial aid from the government, and brick and mortar businesses that were entirely destroyed by the fires will take priority, alongside workers who have lost their full employment as well. Hey, welcome back. Over in Greece, earthquakes, and there are literally hundreds of them happening. They've been rocking the island of Santorini for a week now. So far, no major damage, but local leaders out there are worried that that can change at any moment. Here's NBC's Matt Bradley with more.
Santorini, one of the most beautiful islands in Greece, usually swarming with tourists, now a virtual ghost town. After several days of near constant earthquakes hitting the island, perched on the rim of an ancient volcano, residents are fleeing in droves. Since Saturday, hundreds of small and medium quakes shaking the island and its people's resolve.
Our Santorini is shaking every 10 minutes on average. A lot of earthquakes. There is concern.
In the past 2 days, at least 10 earthquakes above magnitude 4.5 have hit off the coast of Santorini, known for its stunning white and blue buildings.
There have been earthquakes all the time, every 5 minutes. It is continuous. They don't stop at all. The entire island is traumatized.
The quakes so far only strong enough to rattle houses, causing minor damage and some landfalls. But the bigger concern, worry that the quakes could set off an eruption from the volcano at the center of the island. Scientists say that's unlikely, but warn a large enough earthquake could trigger a destructive tsunami. That's what happened back in 1956, when a 7.7 magnitude quake struck Santorini, destroying hundreds of houses, causing a massive 20-foot tsunami and killing upwards of 50 people. The catastrophe devastated many on the island, plunging them into poverty. This time, the country says it's more prepared. The Prime Minister declaring a state of emergency on the island, but urging calm.
My job is to always err on the side of caution, and that is why we have mobilized, the state infrastructure in the eventuality of a bigger earthquake.
A response team is already on the island, with search and rescue dogs to find anyone potentially trapped under the rubble. Hotels and resorts asked to drain their pools so shaking water doesn't destabilize buildings. Schools ordered to shutter for the week for safety. More than 10,000 people have fled the island since Sunday, many boarding a ferry service headed for the mainland. But even with the unnerving, constant shaking, some residents say they're not going anywhere.
We will stay here. Why should we leave? If something happens, it happens. Oh well. We are locals. We were born here.
Preferring, like some have for thousands of years, to remain on this rugged but beautiful gem of the Aegean.
Matt Bradley, thank you. Let's take a quick look at some of the other stories happening around the world right now. First to Israel, where we now know the names of the next 3 hostages that Hamas will release tomorrow. They are Eli Shurabi, Ohad Ben-Ami, and Or Levy. 18 hostages have been freed since the ceasefire started on January 19th. The 2 people are dead after a small plane crashed into a bus in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Both the plane and the bus exploded on impact, hurting 6 other people. That plane barely missing rows of cars driving by on a highway. The Brazilian Air Force is investigating the cause of the crash. And check out these images of a red waterway in Argentina. Here it is. It's flowing through a residential neighborhood in Buenos Aires. Local officials suggest the color may have been caused by the dumping of textile dye or by chemical waste from a nearby depot. And Panama's president is denying claims that he made a deal with the United States to let vessels pass through the Panama Canal without having to pay. In fact, Panama's constitution and laws regulating the canal would not allow them to waive fees. Panama's president reportedly also spoke to President Trump today over some tensions there. Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. Your chance to hang AI works of art in your home. Yeah, if you really want to do that, we've got details on the first of its kind auction, plus a different world brought to life, how the idea of Hillman College is inspiring a movement on TikTok, the new ways that HBCU education is starting to spread. That's coming up next. Stay tuned. finally tonight. Remember the Cosby Show in the 90s? Well, there was a spinoff called A Different World, and in that different world, there was this university called Hillman College. And leave it to today to take the best of that college, make it education for everyone for free, and then make it a digital reality. And as we celebrate Black Heritage Month, tonight we take you to HillmanTok University. NBC correspondent Maya Eaglin is here with more.
Think of it as a digital HBCU with a student body of over 300,000. Welcome to HillmanTok University.
Hello, HillmanTok students. I am Professor Torre. Welcome to the prehistory of hip-hop.
Hi, my name is Dr. Isaacs, and welcome to Organic Chemistry 1.
Bonjour, chers étudiants de la Hillman University. I am Prof. Letty, your French teacher here.
HillmanTok University is really a space where a lot of Black academics are coming together
to teach classes on just about everything, some 400 classes in all, offered by experts like Dr. Leah Barlow, who teaches at North Carolina A&T State University.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Introduction to African American Studies for the spring semester.
That post of hers back in January unintentionally sparked a movement.
So this was actually accidental. I posted something for my actual students in my course. I was just looking for a way to engage, but this launched something that is much bigger than me now.
In about a week, her class size for Intro to African American Studies grew from 35 students to almost 4 million.
This coming week, we'll be looking at Donald Glover's This Is America, the music video, and analyzing the lyrics of the song.
But Sierra Hinton really formalized HillmanTok.
Good morning, HillmanTok.
And she named it after the fictional Hillman College from the 80s sitcom A Different World.
I know my parents loved me. Stand behind me, come what may.
I've always wanted to go to Hillman.
And now she can, in lectures posted on TikTok.
We don't want to exclude education or information to anyone that is willing to learn from anyone that is willing to teach.
Hinton is a 6th grade teacher in Georgia, and after seeing Dr. Barlow's post, got to work immediately, linking all the courses through one website, even launching a school store.
The amount of people that said that they wanted to go to college, but for whatever reason, finances, life, I'm too old, that's no longer an issue here at HillmanTok.
While this is an unaccredited and totally symbolic social media university, it provides a free academic community with a network of Black educators. At a time when federal programs that promote diversity are being taken away.
I know that a lot of people are concerned with the state of our country, but as long as we as a people just lean on each other, that's all that we can do.
But there's still a lot of questions with the uncertainty of TikTok's future.
Have you all spoken about how you can survive HillmanTok University if the platform of TikTok goes away?
Well, yes, I think the main thing has been to make sure that the information is posted in other places and not just on TikTok.
We have contingencies upon contingencies.
Until then, class is in session.
Make sure you got your pen and your paper and you're ready to take notes.
Hillminstagram? That sounds pretty good too. Maya Eaglin joins us now. Maya, okay, so what courses are offered at Hillman, and when are you going to start teaching there? Because like all you do is teach me stuff.
I know. I would love to start my own course, but right now there's something for everyone, Gadi. We have finance, we have business, we have creative arts, film studies, jazz. Some of them even have hilarious names. There's a culinary class called We Got Food at Home, which I think is so funny. But yeah, there's something for everyone on there.
And how do people take a course, and how do people teach a course?
So a lot of people who are hosting these courses or teaching them are just posting straight to TikTok. But if you want to see the actual formalized course list, you'll have to go to their website, which is HillmanTokHBCU.com. I should mention, Gadi, there was a little bit of drama over the official account in the last week or so. The original team told me they got blocked out. So the new username on TikTok is the HillmanTok University, and they're working to kind of build back that student community right now. Gadi?
It wouldn't be the internet without a little bit of drama. But it's crazy, like syllabus almost through hashtags and course offerings. What has been the reaction online?
Like everything, a little mixed, but I would say definitely leaning towards positive. A lot of people have expressed
gratitude for having access to this type of educational community, something they thought maybe wouldn't be possible in their lifetime. There are some other people who are saying, hey, this actually isn't really legit, or it doesn't feel inclusive. And when I asked Sierra about that criticism, she says the mission of HillmanTok is so much bigger than some of these negative comments, and they're really, really focused on the future. Gadi?
Yeah, focused on education. Maya Eglin, thank you so much. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here on Monday, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.